All right. Salutations, listeners. Sivalis Valeo, Vala Magulis, Nano Nano. Thank you for tuning in. This is Three Men and a Basement, and we are the Ultra Crepidarians. My name is Colin McLeod.
Mark Alpier.
Timothy Magic checking in.
In this podcast, we review movies, and we deliver to you, the listener, an average schmuck's opinion about hidden gems in the wide world of cinema. In this show, we try and target movies that are not blockbuster smashes and ones that are not so obscure that you couldn't get your hands on a copy if you wanted to, but instead we aim for that delightful sweet spot of movies that are right in the middle. We try to look for films that, in our experience, not enough people have seen, maybe people have only heard of, or ones that people may have seen back in the day when they first came out, but have forgotten about, and those films deserve another watch. So, we review these, and then we deliver to you our take on whether or not they're worth hunting down and watching for yourself. So, in this, the 6th episode of the podcast, we review the movie Citizen X. Citizen X, IMDb version.
We fucked it up. Oh, God. We should have done this as the 10th episode.
For
the Roman numerals. Ooh. Dang it.
Because of X.
That was very clever.
Wah, wah.
I should have waited for this until February, because this is the story about Malcolm X, right?
This is
Black
this is
History
not,
Month.
actually. I'm very surprised.
What?
I like the deep cut there.
What? You
Yes.
tricked me, Colin.
Yes.
You tricked me. I was waiting for that actor to
I am
show
tricking all of you.
We just
Oh my
completely took it over. Anyhow, this week we watched the movie Citizen X. This is an HBO TV movie that you probably haven't heard of, but it's pretty good.
Not a lot of people have. So this movie, this was my pick this week, and I gotta say, like, this is the movie that I direct people to when somebody comes out of the blue and says, hey, what's a movie I've probably never even heard of that I should watch? This is the movie I direct them to, or one of maybe like a handful of 5 or so.
Now, do we feel like we're cheating a little bit that it's an HBO original instead of something theatrically released?
See, I don't think so. I think this is the kind of movie that, like, it absolutely deserved a theatrical release if it didn't get one. I don't think it did. I think it was straight to HBO, but it fucking deserved to be in the theaters. I think... So, from what I understand, the movie Hocus Pocus was originally supposed to be a Disney Channel original movie. It was supposed to be only released on the Disney Channel, and it wasn't until they were in production or shortly before production that they were like, I think this movie's got the chops to be in the theaters and not just, for TV release. And they moved up, they sort of stepped the production up to a theatrical release. I think
money on it.
This movie should have had that happen.
Gotcha. Yeah, a good comparison. Yeah, I put those in the same camp. Yeah.
So this movie came out in 1995, runtime of an hour and 45 minutes. It is rated R, which I think is definitely appropriate.
Quite warranted.
Yes, needed.
And it is listed as a biography crime drama. I think it's about there. Biography maybe a little
That's generous.
Strong.
That's generous. It's historical. Gracious.
It covers the bullet points of the era.
Yeah, gracious, artistic liberties given.
Yeah, so this movie, it does kind of follow one character, but it doesn't follow him so closely that I would, like, my mind would jump to biography. It's not like a full history of this person's life.
Yeah.
However, there is sort of a main character that it follows.
I always take a grain of salt whenever we watch movies with based on historical events or based on a true story. That's the rub, isn't it? You have to look out for what they're going to add for flourish or for cinema and audiences, general audiences.
So for our IMDb description, we've got, during the 1980s, Soviet authorities hunt for a serial killer who picks up victims in railway stations and commuter trains and lures them into the woods. I feel like that is very bare bones of this movie. I feel like none of it's wrong, but it's really just the nuts and bolts.
That's the very tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it sets a setting, you know. It gives you something to connect with if you go into it, but yeah, it certainly does not do the movie justice.
No. We'll cover it a little bit more, maybe in spoilers, but that is sort of like a very base description. I think a sort of spoiler-free version, in addition to that, might be, it sort of follows the person who is hunting the most notorious serial killer in Russian history and sort of poises him against the Russian state because he's trying to capture this serial killer whilst being sort of overrun or overwashed by what Russian officials are willing to admit and go forth with. So that's sort of a spoiler-free version to add to the IMDb description.
Yeah.
Director, we've got Chris Girolamo. Anybody know him?
Nope.
Not a household name for
No,
me.
no.
Sorry.
I think you did a great job, but sorry, Chris, I don't know who you are.
Fine.
Some of the listeners might know. Stars, though. We've got Stephen Ray. I actually always thought it was Rhea, but I think I heard recently it pronounced Ray, and I think that might actually be how it is. Stephen Ray you might know from Fear.com, another movie that's on our list to review. He was one of the main characters in that. What else was he in?
I think for me, I recognized him most from V for Vendetta.
Same.
Yes.
Same. It dawned on me like 20 minutes into the movie. Like, wait a second. This is the same hard-boiled detective.
Yep, and he's still making a lot of movies. So he's still a name, maybe not a headliner, but you've seen his face.
Yeah, definitely seen his face. In this movie, we also have Donald Sutherland, little-known actor.
Just a silver fox,
Yeah.
You will not know who this guy is when you see him. No,
Be
aside,
charmed by his charisma. No, never.
I think even the younger generation is going to know who he is because of his roles in the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
You're going to know this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was also in A Time to Kill.
Nice.
One of my favorites.
So good.
Played that old-timey lawyer type. Donald Sutherland has just been sort of like a timeless icon of
He
cinema.
just charms the pants right off me.
Mm-hmm.
They literally came off during the viewing of this. I'm sorry, guys.
Yep.
I'm putting them back on now.
I think the last of like the big names, we've got Max von Sydow. Again, he's another face that you're gonna recognize. If you've seen HBO, he's the three-eyed raven in that. I think that for me was what jumped out. Did you guys have any movies of his that really jumped out at you?
For Max,
He was definitely so he was in Minority Report, as I recall.
yeah.
But also, his career was definitely like more golden. I think in like the 60s, 70s, and 80s. He was in Flash Gordon.
Shit, my pretentious cinephile butt is like just quivering because I'm like, he was in The Seventh Seal. Oh my god, it's in the Criterion Collection, guys.
Oh my goodness.
Yes,
He is.
So two other people that I think some of you might know by face, but not by name. We've got Imelda Staunton, who I absolutely could never have put a name to, but some of our viewers or listeners might know her as Dolores Umbridge from the Harry Potter series.
Yep.
She is in this.
Yeah, I think that was her in Order of the Phoenix.
Yep, Order of the Phoenix, Shakespeare in Love, big screen, small screen, Paddington 2. Everybody loved the Paddington movies, so
Everybody loved
everybody
Paddington.
loved them.
How do you not like Paddington?
How do you hate Paddington?
Also in this, we've got Joss Ackland. I don't know if how well I'm pronouncing that, but you might know him from A Kid in King Arthur's Court. He played he played King Arthur.
Oh god, he's got such a. You know once you see his face, you'll know him.
Very unforgettable face.
Yes.
He's kind of got like a
Like an angry Santa that like shaved his beard.
Yes.
Beard. And
yeah, he's got these bug eyes. Like
yeah,
he's like if Marty Feldman and Santa had a kid.
Yeah.
Like this is who they would birth. He was also in the second Bill and Ted movie, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Plays the bad guy. I can't remember his character's name, but yeah, definitely a solid cast, especially for like an HBO movie. Like they pulled out some stops to ring in some of these people. So props to them. All right, so that's anything else on our spoiler-free territory, our elevator version of this movie?
Do we not want to like list the serial killer right now? Jeffrey Damon.
Oh, Damon.
Yeah, because again, it's one of those faces. Once you see him, it's like, oh shoot, I know him from so many things.
What would the listeners probably most recognize?
Green Mile and The Mist is the first thing that comes to mind for me. Yeah, he's just perfect for a spooky shit.
Yeah,
like The Mist, like the Green Mile.
Yeah, he's definitely got an unsettling kind of like... He's got one of those stares
Mm-hmm.
that just like... He can look right through you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
You know, very, very unsettling.
very
type.
intense actor.
he's a good choice for this role too.
Yeah.
Oh, he nailed it. He almost stole the show from Stephen Rea.
Yeah.
For me, anyway.
So, would we recommend this movie?
Well, I would. I don't think this movie's for everybody. It's not a it's not an action movie. You know, I think some people are gonna get bored with it, but I think it's definitely worth seeing, especially for I don't know, just the being exposed to the reality that was that, and how it's kind of shaped crime investigations kind of going forward. I think that we learned something from this particular, case study. But yeah, no, I would recommend it. Tim?
Yes, again with that trigger warning. I do have to, not for the faint of heart. I think I have to preface that. Going in, obviously it's an HBO movie. Obviously it's for adult audiences. It's R rating, if I remember, on IMDb, what we were saying. Watch it, but if you're sensitive to things of serial murder,
child murder,
of pedophilia and mutilations, if you're sensitive to just being pro-America, don't watch this movie.
To be fair, they don't really show a lot.
No.
It's a
It's
lot
not
of
graphic.
It's implied,
It's
but
not
the
graphic.
content is very don't watch this with your kids.
No. Again, all adults only.
But
So, grain of salt, asterisk. Yes.
Yeah.
it's graphic
But
and
I
subject
liked it.
matter.
But I liked it.
No.
Again, if you're one of those people who watches How to Catch a Murderer or How to Make a Murderer, if you watch the John Wayne Gacy documentaries, if you're a fan of all of that stuff, yeah, this is right up your alley. But if you're not, if that's stuff that you shy away from your next Netflix subscription, yeah, pass on this.
So how about you, Colin? I feel like I already know the answer, but
Yeah, I think you prefaced this as something you recommend to people who haven't seen.
I fucking love this movie. I think this movie is so underrated. It's the kind of movie that really, if you haven't seen it, see it as quickly as possible. I will agree that if you're the type of person that's particularly sensitive to this type of subject matter, yeah, maybe it's not for you, but I would say for your standard person, you'll probably like this movie. The reason I think a lot of people like this movie is the popularity of a lot of television shows that highlight serial killers and the hunt for them, and you got CSI, you got NCIS, you got name any other fucking initialism that's going to be running on a Tuesday night on NBC.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
This highlights an interest in this type of thing that I think is kind of innate almost in people. You're interested in this type of aberrant human behavior, and you're interested in how we can characterize it and then use that characterization to catch the people who would perpetrate these horrible crimes. And this movie is a brilliant dissection of that from a character who really has been given none of the heavy lifting done for them with respect to criminal profiling, to these types of things. This person literally wrote their own book to catch one of the most horrific killers in the history of his nation. So I absolutely recommend this movie to just about everybody except for children.
Yeah.
All right, so with that being said, I think we're ready to sort of transition into spoiler territory.
let's do it. Spoil it.
Okay, so we are moving into spoiler territory. So, deep personal overview of this movie. We open in 1982, and Stephen Ray's character plays a medical examiner in the Soviet state, in the USSR, in this small town. It's his first day on the job, and he's kind of getting used to things, and this policeman, the head of the local police, comes in with a body.
Plainclothes policeman.
Yeah, kind of like a detective.
Kind of like a detective, yeah.
And he comes in with this body, and Stephen Ray Stephen Ray is doing his examination, and he notices this person was murdered, and it was pretty savage. And he tells the policeman go look through the woods to see if basically anything else was anything could be used to identify this body. Mm-hmm. And so the policeman, it's kind of funny because the policeman's it's 5:00, I'm off right now. Mm-hmm. And Stephen Ray's I don't care what time it is, get out there and look. And so the cop goes, and it takes Stephen Ray a couple hours to do the autopsy, and the guy comes back with 6 more bodies that they found in the woods, all with the same type of wounds, all with the same type of disfigurement. Yeah. And he immediately realizes that he's got a serial killer on his hands. Like, you know, next scene, before
we move on, I want to, like, again, dress this up as an amazing adaptation of the screenplay, that we are being shown and not told that this is Stephen Ray's first day. He's very new. He's very green to this job. The predecessor was mentioned briefly, but they were already getting a foundation that he's like making a new office, doing a new set of rules.
And it's all done
the new guy.
through the dialogue.
Exactly. It's
not
not clunky.
Ham-fisted kind of.
Yeah. It basically gets revealed that his predecessor was sort of funny and jovial, but also very incompetent and lazy.
Yeah.
And it's very clear that there's friction now between the head police officer and Stephen Ray's character, because he basically is not that way. He's very pedantic, very meticulous, and he cares about what he is doing. Mm-hmm. And there's immediately friction between the two of them because he's nothing like his predecessor. Mm. So, you know, after a beat, not long of a beat, it's like the next day, he has this like meeting with all of the head Russian officials locally. So you've got the mayor, you've got the local head of the KGB, you've got the head of the militia, played by Donald Sutherland, and then probably the most powerful person in the room, you've got
like the head of the party.
The head of the party, the head of the Communist Party.
That like region.
Yeah. And
he's very concerned about party members and about the presentation of government and how we are in control. We've never had any problems before.
He drinks the Kool-Aid.
We do not have serial killers. We do not have any disturbances like they do in those weird
decadent
Western
West.
states.
And that is absolutely the greeting that he gets. Like, he walks into this room
immediately stonewalled.
Yeah, the first thing he says is, it's very clear that we've already got a serial killer on our hands, and already the most prolific in Russian history. Mm-hmm. And basically all of the faces are like, nope.
Fucking no.
And actually, the thing I absolutely love about this scene is it sets the stage for both Stephen Ray's character and Donald Sutherland's character. So basically what happens is Stephen Ray is uncompromising. He walks into the room and he says, this is what we need. No ifs, ands, or buts. These are the resources that we need. Yeah. Donald Sutherland's character basically stays quiet while all of these other characters are basically saying, absolutely not, it's not a serial killer, that's not possible, even if it were, like, it's probably this, blah, blah. They're, like, making excuses. Yeah. Meanwhile, Donald Sutherland...
Stephen's character is making claims. In 1982, Iron Curtain is still down, Berlin Wall still up. He's asking to talk to the Americans, he's asking to go public, he's asking for more men.
Yeah.
He is casting a line for a big fish, and he ain't gonna get it.
No, and meanwhile, Donald Sutherland is sitting there, and he's taking notes about what Stephen Ray is demanding, and that's so important to understanding the story, because he's basically the person who understands how to play the game. You are not going to get anywhere in the Soviet state by just walking in and demanding, like, we need to parlay with the Americans, and we need more men, and we need to go public with this. Like, that's not going to happen. What you do is you identify what you need, and then you find sort of like surreptitious ways of getting it. Yes. And he's good at that. He's good at playing the game, playing politics. And he knows Stephen Ray is smart, methodical, and isn't going to say he needs something that he doesn't need, but Donald Sutherland knows how to get it. And that's the brilliance of the two characters sort of working in tandem.
Yeah, it's the practical versus the politic. It's awesome.
And early on in the movie, you don't appreciate that, you know, his character is trying to help Stephen Ray.
Oh, it's very subtle at first.
You really kind of get the impression that he is a part of the problem. And it isn't until probably like the midway point, or even 3/4 of the way through the movie, that like you really start appreciating how he is pulling strings, but not advertising that he's doing so. He never says, hey, hold on, let me do some things and I'll get it done.
Exactly.
It's, hey, it's already done. Here is what you need.
Right. Again, it's so brilliant because it's all behind the scenes, and like it's just played out through the course of the movie seamlessly. Again, it's not clunky at all. I love that.
Yeah, and one of the things
many moments there like
that I liked about it is it really kind of showcases bureaucracy, red tape, from an outsider's perspective initially, with Stephen Ray's character kind of coming into the wall, no pun intended. But then I think throughout the movie it fleshes out what bureaucracy can really be. It's not this like faceless piece of red tape. It's not, this legion of politicians in a room. It's just a handful of guys who have very different points of view, very different priorities, and
understandings.
Yeah, and a lot of human biases.
Yeah.
I mean, they spend a good chunk of the time during their investigation ridiculously just arresting random homosexuals because the party head believes that was the case. He wanted to blame it on the gays, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So just keep arresting him. And Stephen Ray's character realizes that he has to do this because he's being told, but he has no belief that this is the correct path to take.
Again, you just see that downtrodden and like discouraged, hard-boiled look on on Ray's face the whole time.
Yep.
And he just magnifies that. It's awesome.
Very defeated.
Very defeated, but he just pulls that off as a character flawlessly.
Yeah, I mean, like, at one point there's this person who is like, all right, they say retarded in the film, so I'm just going to use the word retarded. And he's in an institute.
We warned you.
Yeah, he's in an institute, and he, you can't see my hands. I'm doing air quotes. He confesses, and then they're trying to get him to lead them to the murder sites, and they're like coaching him through it. And Stephen Ray's okay, this is fucking stupid. This guy obviously didn't do it. He's been coerced. And so they like have this guy in custody, and then of course another murder is perpetrated, and Stephen Ray is like at the next meeting, I hope this puts to rest the idea that a retard from the institute perpetrated these murders. And the party head literally looks him in the face and goes, "Why?" And Stephen Ray's like, "Because he was in custody when the murder was perpetrated."
Yeah.
And they just they genuinely don't care.
It's because it's not about finding the murderer.
No,
it's about putting a lid on it.
Yeah, play to our our reality.
Mm-hmm. So basically, this movie takes place over almost 10 years when Stephen Ray's character is basically trying to hunt down this serial killer who has a penchant for young, mostly female, but not exclusively youths. A few adults, but it was like 70 or 80% children under 17.
More than 50% were under the age of 18.
It was like 52 total, 37 of which were under 17.
And basically his method was to pick up these people at the train station, and then he would get them in like an isolated spot, kill them, and then do his nastiness. It's like a pretty horrific, like the way this guy killed. And one of the things that I think is absolutely brilliant about this film is they decided very early on to expose the killer. Like, who the killer is almost the entire movie. And it's not at all a guess. And I love that because it builds this sense of like being right around the corner. Like you want to shout at the screen. Yeah, you want to shout at the screen like, he's right there.
Yeah.
Like, and actually at very early on when this was happening, they found him
multiple times.
They actually had him in custody, and they released him because he was a party member in good standing.
Well, and that's why they did it, but the way that the movie kind of showcases that action is Stephen Ray's character has him. He believes that it's him, and he's very much just told.
Has him dead to rights. Rope, knife in the bag.
Literally in the bag.
Yeah.
But, because he's a registered party member, we're going back to our just room of a couple of guys, he's a party member, you're gonna release him.
Release him, he's not gay.
Basically, I mean, they didn't say that specifically, but
yeah, that was the subject, again, with the party head.
Yeah. So they have to release him, and he continues to do what he was doing.
Exactly.
Now, it did turn out, and we're in full spoilers here, it did turn out that initial capture did play into, just highlighting his face when they ultimately did bring him down. It was that they recognized that this same person came up as a suspect who was a suspect previously, and that was kind of what tied the knot for
That
him.
is true,
5-6 years later, it's like, wait a second, you've seen this guy? You remember him? Okay, we gotta take him in.
Yeah.
And then again, this is going from Berlin Wall, still up, 82, 1990, coming down. It's down.
Yeah, and
Different
actually,
regimes.
What's interesting is that was actually that was probably the most important part of the movie politically, is basically this entire time, Donald Sutherland's character is trying to, again, very surreptitiously gather resources for Ria's investigation of this killer. And he's kind of having trouble doing so. But then when the wall comes down, he gets promoted to be a general. Again, because he plays politics very well. He positioned himself to be promoted when this all happened. And he basically goes to Stephen Ria's character in one of the best sequences in the film, and is basically like, you need men, you've got men. You need to talk to the FBI, you've got it. You know, anything that you need, we can now do it. You want publicity? As much as I can get you, I will. And it's basically this, like, outpouring of resources, and that's what ultimately leads to the capture, because they can use what they have. And what's really, like, what do I want to say, frustrating maybe throughout this whole thing is it is a lack of resources, and specifically, like, because the Russian government would never admit that this was happening, Stephen Ray's character is basically writing the book. He's building the plane as he's flying it, and he can't contact the FBI and say, hey, what do you guys have so far? What am I probably looking at? What should I be looking at that I'm not?
Exactly.
He basically is just inventing all of this shit as he's going. And
he's so closed off from the West.
Yeah.
This whole time for 8+ years.
And nobody in the Soviet Union's ever done this.
Exactly. They've not.
And he's a medical examiner. He is not, he's not a detective. He is a medical examiner that just took on this mantle, which is, I think, another kind of brilliant part of this story.
Yeah, I didn't really think about this earlier, but there is a stark change, like you were talking about, after the wall comes down. Do you, from our bias, do you think this is in part a propaganda piece? A little bit. This came out in 1995. This was actually not that far after that took place.
You're right. After the close of the case.
You know, this whole, once the wall comes down, everything is better. You know, the sun is shining. You know, this, even the weather throughout the movie is very kind of dreary. Once the wall comes down, things are shiny. You know, clothes are looking different. The resources pour in. What do you think of that theory?
I could definitely see that being a thing in Russia, as like, oh, this is American cinema. They're being so dramatic. But at the same time, with communication flowing a little bit more freely in 2 decades prior to when we were recording this, it can definitely be seen as a little bit of historical fiction, a little bit of liberty, and a little bit of, truth in the
Maybe.
I think you probably, like, you could probably make that argument, but at the same time, I feel like you can't cook the books to the point where, like they did capture him after the fall.
They did.
And they did change their strategy after the fall. And, like, some of these things are just, they're too big to turn the ship. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can change the color palette, and you can change, like, like you said, the weather and shit, but at the same time, like, you can't change, like, the major events, and this stuff did happen after that wall came down.
Yeah.
It is great, the tearing down of the poster of Lenin as a figure for the communist bloc.
I don't know, I guess that's a bit of a tangent, but yeah.
It fits. So. It's all part of it. You're right, Mark. So it is all part of it.
Let's talk about some of the things that we liked about the acting. I know for me, I really appreciated Stephen Rea's character. And honestly, I wasn't a fan of Donald Sutherland's performance until maybe halfway through.
Oh, really?
Initially, and maybe this was intentional, I also looked at him as being very kind of one-dimensional. And I guess after the fact, I appreciate him more because you're kind of you're pulled into the narrative that he's actually been working with very handedly for a while.
See, it's funny because I actually completely disagree on Donald Sutherland's my favorite character in this movie, and it might be because this is probably like my 20th time seeing this movie, so I am very familiar with his character.
Is this an evolution? You've just watched them so.
Dude, I have watched. I watch movies. That's all I do.
So much.
But his character, he's so subtle in his stuff. He conveys that he rides that line and conveys his position as the person who rides the fence until it's time to be definitive so well. And that's exactly like what was needed. And like his contribution, like there's no overstating Stephen Ray's character's contribution, but Donald Sutherland's character, like it's very easy to miss all of the things that he did that drove this investigation forward, that saved the investigation and basically saved Stephen Rea from a bullet probably in some cases. Like there was a point where, you know, he was talking to his wife and he was like, the guy who was the head of the local Communist Party, he's like, he's not happy with me and he's made some threats towards me and they could come and take me in the night.
Yeah.
And that's not good.
Yeah.
No, you definitely see the stress that Stephen Rea feels throughout the course of this movie. You see him break down a couple of times at home at the interrogation board or the Communist Party board of supervisors in the woods, in the train station. He's just like, again, he just owns this role so well. But again, Donald Sutherland will just charm the pants right off me. I love him. I love his charisma. I love his subtlety, and I love his delivery on his own little cat and mouse adventure with the communists. As Stephen Rea is playing cat and mouse with the killer, with Citizen X, Sutherland has to manipulate party officials, people in Moscow, governors, everything. He has to run the whole gambit.
There's a great little scene where he kind of like sits back and he says, you know, I've found how did he phrase it? You know, delicious piece of information.
Gossip.
Yeah,
little piece of gossip.
Delicious piece of gossip.
Yeah.
And he just says it and he just leaves it alone. It's not addressed until a little bit later.
And Stephen Ray's character doesn't probe because he's not interested.
He's not into that.
He doesn't like gossip. He finds it useless.
Different coin.
But what's really like brilliant about it is a few scenes later, again, this local Communist Party leader is trying to bring the hammer down on Stephen Ray's character, and he tells Donald Sutherland to fire him, and Donald Sutherland says no, and then basically they're alone, and the guy starts threatening Donald Sutherland, and Donald Sutherland basically like tells the guy that I know that you are secretly gay. I know that this is the apartment where you keep basically a male prostitute and shower him with gifts and all this stuff. And I know the dates of all your last visits and blah, blah, blah. And like, that was the fucking piece of gossip that he got from a
couple scenes prior.
Yeah. And it's just absolutely outstanding the way he wields that knowledge.
Exactly. It's the methodical, detective work of Ray, and it's the party manipulation, the political manipulation of Sutherland that makes this movie. It's like two sides of the different coin. Yeah, and they've worked so well.
I think it's really interesting that, you know, just a quick conversation, just a handful of sentences can change the course of, you know, a real life, like the real world, you know.
Yeah.
That conversation played into getting this killer off the streets, you know. Its echoes were so big, and its execution so small.
Exactly. It's what I went through with my writing course in college. Is like every scene needs to contribute to the plot to move it forward, and this film did that so much. There's nothing wasted. Even the chatter, even that gossip line was not wasted. Because it mattered to move the plot forward.
So one thing that we haven't gotten to is about 3/4 of the way through the film. As we said, Stephen Ray's character is sort of like trying to write the book on catching this serial killer. And what he ends up doing, I think because he heard that the FBI was doing this as well, is he actually enlisted a psychiatrist played by Max von Sydow. And he basically... He has a whole bunch of psychiatrists, and everybody like walks out of everybody like walks out of the room and is like, absolutely not, you know, blah blah
we're
blah.
Not gonna get ourselves flagged by the party.
Yeah, and Max von Sydow's character approaches them afterward, not in the room, and you know basically makes light of, you know, I want to be subtle while I'm risking my career. And what he ends up doing is he writes a profile based on the information that Stephen Ray's character has provided to him, a profile of the individual that sort of perpetrated these crimes, and they use that profile to try to narrow the suspects down. And it not only helps in the investigation, in narrowing the field basically, but more importantly, later in the film, after they've captured the serial killer, Chikatilo is the guy's real name, After they've captured him, they cannot get him to confess. And unfortunately, sort of due to circumstances, they don't have enough to keep him, and they need him to confess. So what they end up doing is, the very last day, they bring in Max von Sydow's character, and he doesn't know what he's doing, so he ends up saying, I'll read to you basically the profile of you that I wrote. And so he starts reading, this document that he constructed that he titled Citizen X, which is that's the namesake of the movie. And it was when he was going through this that it was so accurate that Chikatilo broke down and like started reacting emotionally because it was actually like really accurate and it was scaring him. And that's basically how they drew a confession out of him. And it's a fascinating piece of the movie, and it is very essential to the sort of conclusion of this particular case. Chikatilo ended up being convicted of all 52 crimes and actually led investigators to, I think, three
other bodies.
Three more bodies undiscovered.
Yeah, that was the icing on the cake. Not only did he admit to it and they had everything that they had previously, but he was able to take them to just completely new sites. So there was no question in anyone's mind.
And that was, I think that was a really brilliant, it's one of those things where it's an interesting story, independent of the film, but the dramatized version was amazing. Like when Max von Sydow's reading this to Chikatilo, and you just see him starting to like react to it. And, one of the things that he said was he was trying to guess as to why all of the victims had their eyes stabbed out. Mm-hmm. And he had basically outlined like 3 different possibilities. Like 1, it was like a way to dominate them. 2, he couldn't stand their gaze even when they were dead. Okay. And then 3 was this old idea that an image, the last image somebody sees, is burned into the back of their eyes, and investigators would basically be able to see him in the dead's eyes. And when he says that one, he like freaks out
and he nailed it.
He nailed it, and it's just like how did you know that?
How did you know? Well, that's exactly right. And he breaks down. Citizen X breaks down. Yeah. Yep. Chikatilo breaks down.
Brilliant scene. It's the climax. Yeah. It is the climax of the movie.
Yes, because it's a closing point, because it's the last day. It's 4 a.m. or something like that, and he's just like, I was right about that.
Yeah, and you're definitely like at the end.
Then, he goes back over. It's all like, was I right about the ejaculation?
So, again, basically what he was doing while he was killing them. Yeah. While he was killing them, yeah.
Did you achieve it? It's like, yes, sometimes while stabbing, sometimes after.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just an awful, malicious predator of a person just achieving their sexual desire and their gross animal instincts to kill and
I think they do a good job
fornicate at the same time.
They do a good job of illustrating the details and the horror without actually showing it.
Yeah, it's not graphic.
Yeah, there are several murder
scenes intense.
That actually have kind of minimal amounts of blood. Mm-hmm. You see children's head kind of like fall back, still attached, not removed. That didn't come out the right way, but just kind of falling back.
Blood coming out of the mouth or the eyes.
Yeah, but you combine that imagery with the words that they were using to describe the heinous crimes, and you really feel the gravity of it.
Yeah, I think the end of the movie, especially like during that climax, it's kind of important because it gives you that namesake of the movie. Where the whole movie, you're sort of like, why is this called Citizen X? Is this just sort of like a clever phrase? But no, it's actually very important because it was the name of the document, the profile that was basically led to the guy's capture.
Exactly.
So one thing that like kind of surprised me this time about watching this movie was I thought the score was like amazing. Especially the intro, like the beginning of the movie, like the score just immediately sucks me into the movie and I'm there.
For me, I don't think the score jumped out for me. It was there, it added to it, but it didn't jump out in the same way other movies have. But can you how did it make you feel? How did it add to for you?
So that's the thing is like, I've watched this movie so many times and it really is not something that's jumped out to me. And for some reason, when I was watching it this time, it sucked me in and I was like, holy shit, I am in, Soviet Russia circa 1982. It's extremely dark. It is it's very crushing. And it sets the scene, which is very bleak. And it really sort of like drags you through the movie in a really like really healthy way, I think. I was very, very impressed with the score of this film, especially for the origins of this film being like an HBO movie. Like, I can't imagine that they had a ton to spend on developing the score. I was very impressed.
Yeah. What was the budget? I'm just curious. Does anybody have that in front of them?
I don't know. Is that on IMDb?
No, but I am really impressed with a lot of the historical accuracy between the again, that time lapse of the Lenin poster being intact versus being ripped down.
Yeah.
I like the cars in the background. I like the little Soviet era cars in the background and the fortresses. I think they really hit it on the head in '95. Maybe they just had enough left over.
Yeah, they do a good job of showing the passage of time. Yeah,
it was fantastic seeing the transition between like being the small cars versus the bigger cars at the end. A little bit, you know.
Yep.
It's just advancing. I love that little technicality. I love the attention to detail with that.
Also in directing, I gotta say, like, I think one of the most brilliant things that they did in this film is there's 3 different scenes where Stephen Ray and Donald Sutherland are basically talking to each other whilst somebody is getting interrogated. So they're like on the other side of that one-way mirror, and the scene is entirely shot over the shoulder, but you're seeing the other person's face in the reflection of the glass. And it's a really, like, cool, creative way that they made these 2 characters who are basically standing side by side almost have a face-to-face conversation. And those scenes also tended to be very, like, chock full, very dense with, like, important points. So, like, that's one of the scenes where Donald Sutherland says, like, oh, I've got this, you know, delicious bit of gossip. They were interviewing one of the homosexuals that had unfortunately been arrested for, you know, nothing more than being gay. But it was one of those that were arrested. It was the guy in the tank that had basically revealed that party official was gay, and actually that was really important in that it provided Donald Sutherland some leverage to push back and say, like, no, I'm not firing Ray's character.
Yeah.
Basically, his job is going to be waiting for him. It's really clever way of shooting those scenes, and props to the director for coming up with that.
Yeah. I think creatively, we've already kind of covered, I think, some of the creative decisions that they had, you know, whether it be, you know, showing the passage of time or kind of what you were talking about, Colin. I don't know if I would define this movie by its creativity. It was kind of a by the numbers, but they did it in an entertaining, intricate way. You know, those are my thoughts on that. I mean, what are the kind of intangibles or what things about this movie jumped out at you guys? The
one thing that, thinking about it, jumped out at for the intangibles, it actually traces back to the cover a little bit, and traces back to Chickadilla's executions. Unfortunately, it looks a little glorified. A lot of times, we saw this a little bit in Messenger. Unfortunately, there's a lot of like glorification and a lot of that great score used during the butchering of these youths, of these people that Cisnex executes in the woods somewhere. Unfortunately, it's a little too stylized, it's a little too beautiful. So I worry about that a little bit, to glorify a serial killer's...
I could definitely see where somebody would interpret it that way, but I almost see, like, I see it almost differently, and I think what the director may have been going for is, like, the score is very grand during those scenes, and I could see somebody interpreting that as, like, glorification, but it almost feels like a really dramatic hammer blow. Yeah. And honestly, I see this almost like a hammer being struck against Ray's character again and again and again. And like every time a new murder comes up, he is crushed because he views himself as failing. Like, I haven't done this. I haven't solved the crime, and these kids are dying because I haven't done enough. And like it feels very very defeating almost, rather than glorifying. Though I can absolutely see how that score might send that message.
Again, it's the lighting and the score and like a lot of the, you know, it's again, the victims look beautiful.
Yeah, I think,
you know, it's unfortunate, you know.
I think I agree with what you're saying, but I don't know if I would personally tie it to the score. I think that whenever you're going to make a movie about a serial killer, you kind of have to thread this narrow line where you know, to make a good story, you need to make the killer relatable. You need to make them sympathetic. You need to make them three-dimensional. And so you make these movies and you can glorify these people because, you know, in this particular movie, There's a scene that illustrates it really well, and this is going to tie into one of my quotes for this. But the killer and the killer's wife have just finished, he's
not finished.
Yeah, or not finished. They just had sex, and he gets up, and his wife kind of like rolls over and looks at him and just calls him pathetic. And
because he can't even get an erection. Like that's part of what like drives him to kill is his inability to sort of perform sexually. Like he can't get erections, and he can't bring himself to climax, and he sort of needs this like violent release.
Yeah, which his deficiency makes him relatable. It almost ties it up like, okay, well, I understand why he's doing it. Yeah. And I think you have to be really careful, too, because there are a lot of movies about killers, and you don't want to make them too relatable.
You don't want to humanize them too much. But again, that's the scary thing about this, is it's true crime. Mm-hmm. That's scarier than any zombie, than any alien, than any monster from a lake can ever be.
Absolutely.
Because it's them among us.
Yeah.
And that's, again, this movie nails it because it's trains. The common people have to ride them. Everybody's going to be on there. It's a wolf among us.
Yeah. Do you think that
it's scary?
Here's the question, though. I guess this kind of gets almost philosophical here. Is it better to humanize the killer so that we can see how close we all individually are to that evil, or is it better to not humanize them so it doesn't give us something to grapple onto and relate to? I think you could probably argue either point, and you're always going to run into that problem when you're doing a movie about a killer. I mean, they made Dexter, in that TV series relatable, and they humanized him. And,
But I think like that's one of the brilliant like things about this film, whether they intended to or not, was they humanized him enough to where you're almost like, okay, I get it. Mm-hmm. This person has pent up sexual rage. I understand sort of their motivation. It's not that I endorse it. It's terrible, but they're not Jason, who's just this like faceless, not nameless. He's, but faceless killer that's killing for seemingly no reason. Like he is a person. But at the same time, they definitely distance you like from the savagery of his murders, and you're definitely like, holy shit, he is a human that is doing inhuman things. Mm-hmm. And I think they ride that line where they don't glorify, but you're not so distant that you couldn't understand and basically make it not scary, because like part of what's not scary about like what you said, Swamp Thing and fucking monsters and shit, is like they're not human. And part of what makes them not scary is we view them as mindless killing machines. Mm-hmm. And this guy was not. He had a family, he had 2 kids and a wife, and
a job,
he blended in.
A party member, he kept a 9 to 5, and he kept
he
all appearances
disappeared,
up, and he just got away for it for almost a decade. Probably more, because 50 people, 52 confirmed, over the course of, at least, God, and there were so many decayed bodies, so it's probably over a decade that this killer just lived among these villagers in
Russia.
Terrifying.
Terrifying.
In small and big towns, because the trains went everywhere. Like, the trains had to run on time in the communist block. They have to. And so, of course, he could just go anywhere. And, like, that's another thing that I had to clench down on him, is, like, it clearly is the train stations. It clearly is people that can get to these areas. Well, so that was brilliant again.
And here's the question: what do you guys think is the scariest element here? Be it how almost relatable the killer is. Do you think that the scary part is the actual crimes that he's committed, or do you think the scariest part is the fact that bureaucracy and government, the system, was so flawed that it almost allowed this? I mean, it did. It allowed this to continue. I think that's kind of the crime itself, I guess, is physically the scariest part, but the system that failed is almost scarier, because that's real and that exists, and more killers are going to be more fruitful because the system is broken.
I think the scariest part is definitely like just how seamlessly this person knit into society. Like there was just, that old, unfortunately it's an old phrase now, but that, he seemed like such a quiet man.
Quiet.
Yeah.
He never made a buzz.
Never thought it'd be him. That's fucking
never
scary.
stirred up trouble at work.
No.
Never got in a fight ever in his life. Oh my gosh. The scariest thing for me is just like taking out the youth. Like that's your next generation. And like children predators freak me out a lot.
The targeting was
Like,
unsettling.
Its targeting is unsettling for me always. When I hear stories like that, I just like, what chemicals are shooting off in your brainstem, in your gray matter that's compulsing you to mutilate and abuse the next part of our species. That's just that freaks me out so much. Yeah. And that's the real monsters, and like that exists, obviously, because it's based on true events. Yeah.
Is there anything we didn't like? I'll jump off here and say, like, I think there's only one part of this movie that takes me a little bit out, but I think it's very easy to get over. Is as amazing as I think Stephen Ray did in this movie, I think his Russian accent left a little something to be desired.
No one was a plus on Russia.
Yeah, but I mean, it's definitely something that you can just ignore.
Yeah.
Like, it does not ruin the film. It just sort of, if you're nitpicking, it's a little, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing, I don't know why this jumped out at me, but the movie takes place over 10 years. You're introduced to his kids, and then you see his kids again 10 years later.
Watching TV or something like
watching
that.
TV, but they haven't aged. I think that...
Not very well, anyway.
They're very design
It's very they're very malnourished in the communist bloc, Mark.
Well, yeah, maybe. I don't know. But in contrast to how well they showed the passage of time in other ways... I think it kind of made it jump out a little bit for me.
I got you.
But that's a nitpick, really. The pacing, you have to be in the right mood for it, but I can't really fault it for that because I think that it wasn't trying to be a snappy, exciting movie. It was supposed to be a slow burn because that's what it was.
It pulls you along though. Like it doesn't stall at any points. Like it's not Michael Bay, where it's not like it holding your attention because fucking explosions and like quick cut shots, but like it's definitely like it never stalls. It's a very interesting movie and a compelling narrative.
Yeah. I would compare the pace to The Wire. I don't know if you guys have seen that. But it's similar in that it's a slow burn. You got to be invested, but it's really rewarding when you are.
Quotes next.
I kind of tipped this one. I'll do my second one. I mentioned pathetic earlier, but
the way she says pathetic. Oh,
yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
It's so like
you don't want
cutting. And then, sorry, are you gonna go to the next part of that quote?
Well, I felt like it defined the motivations of the killer really well. My second quote, though, was he may be stupid, but he's in charge. And that was kind of in reference to Stephen Ray's issue with, the party leader. And he's talking to Donald Sutherland's character about it. He may be stupid, but he's in charge. That was the problem that they kept running into when they were trying to progress the case.
Yeah, and sorry, rewinding the tape to your first quote. So they just finish failing having sex, and he rolls over, and she just says pathetic in this like fucking just acidic voice, and she's got one of those faces where she's just like naturally disgusted about everything, and then he like gets dressed and starts walking out, and she goes, "Where are you going? It's Saturday," and he goes, "I'm going to the factory. There was something I was supposed to do yesterday that I didn't," and then she just looks at him and goes, "Why doesn't that surprise me?" And I was just like, fuck. Dude, this dude is just like, as terrible as he is, he's definitely getting like emotionally like berated like pretty routinely, which is sort of like an interesting development to his character.
Yeah.
Tim, how about you? Quotes?
All right. The one that really stands out to me is closest to the end after the interrogation. Max's character comes out and is like, together you guys make a wonderful person. And I think, and that just cements it. Like that just glorifies it. That Sutherland and Ray together are two sides of the same coin. They need to work together, otherwise this would never have happened. The killer would continue on for another decade.
That's definitely true. Yeah, like basically we described how their two characters work together, and you're right. That quote puts a point on what the whole movie is showing you. Right. At the very end, they call it out, and together. You two make one fine person, or whatever he says.
Backhanded compliment.
Yeah. And then, again, I want to highlight any time that Ray and Sutherland are together in, the colonel's office or the general's office, and they're just solo. They're back and forth, their banter of, their methods. It's awesome.
Okay, so as per usual, I've got a bunch, and I'm going to try and run through these really quick because I really dig this movie, and there's so many good, powerful quotes. My absolute top favorite quote in this movie of all time, we sort of teased at it earlier, is when Stephen Ray's character first gets into that room with all of the officials, and he basically says, we've got a serial killer on our hands, blah, 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 and all of the officials are sort of going down the line, coming up with reasons as to why there is not a serial killer. And, it could be a gang, it could be this, it could be that. And it gets to that, a party official, and he says, quote, there are no serial killers in the Soviet state. It is a decadent Western phenomenon. And it's just like, yeah, like, honestly, he could have had a sledgehammer at the end of that and just, like, smash it on an anvil to just, like, drive the point home harder. Like, and of course, one of the other officials is like, well, that sounds more like wishful thinking then. And then he catches the guy's eye and the dude is just staring him down and then he just shuts up. Like, that's the movie in a nutshell. Like, this is, that illustrates the wall that these characters are up against. Mm-hmm. So that's my favorite quote. Another one that I absolutely love is, as we described in the beginning, we've got these guys that, we got the police, the head of the police, and we've got Stephen Ray, who's new to the job, and there's clearly friction between the two of them. And this guy clearly doesn't like Stephen Ray. And about halfway, maybe 3/4 of the way through the movie, Stephen Ray is like going through one of the crime scenes, and he's trying to document a whole bunch of shit, and the other police officers are like kind of laughing and joking around, and he like freaks out on them. He's like, a little respect for the dead, blah, blah, blah. And he's kind of chewing them out. And then that guy, that police chief, goes like, hey, I'll shake them up for you. I'll get them moving. The way he said it was like, don't you worry about that. I'll take care of it for you. And it's just like a brilliant illustration of the respect that he's gathered for Stephen Ray's character throughout the film. It's such a beautiful turning point, and you don't have to put a fine point on it and say, like, I respect you. Like, it's done so beautifully through the dialogue in that quote.
Again, not clunky. It's great because it's, like, at least halfway through the case.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'd say, like, 86 when this happens. And that plainclothes police chief, I'm just like, all right, don't worry, I got him.
Yeah.
He's like, he's got his back, because he knows he's a good detective.
Got his back. I think that's a good, he definitely did not, a good way of putting it. He did not have his back in the beginning. And he definitely did in this scene. And from there on out.
He knows he's actually invested. He's actually a good guy.
Yeah. And it's sort of in the same vein, after the sort of wall comes down and Donald Sutherland's character becomes a general, he goes out with them, because they discover a new body, and he's seeing Stephen Ray's character sort of doing like a canvassing of the scene, and he's walking through the scene by himself, and he asks that plainclothes policeman, he's like, what is he doing? And he said, he likes to get in there and investigate things before we stomp around and make too much of a mess, and basically, contaminate evidence. And Donald Sutherland says, oh, that's smart. And the guy just turns to him and says, yeah, he doesn't do too much dumb. Yeah. And it's just like, yeah, that's it.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, and he's not a detective.
Is he a good detective? He's the best detective.
Yeah, he really is. Yeah, he doesn't do too much dumb, and that's a good way of characterizing his character.
Yes.
And then the final one that I really love is, again, after he becomes a general, Donald Sutherland's character contacts the head of the FBI, and I think it's the head or some high person at the FBI.
A serial killer specialist. In the United States.
Exactly, and he's basically like, they don't show that conversation, but he is relaying this information to Stephen Ray.
Because so much of what Donald Sutherland's character does is behind the scenes. He is a cloak and dagger character, and like that's like never, and that's the perfect execution because it's not flamboyant. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Am I doing spy stuff? No, he's doing actual like legwork behind the scenes. He's actually doing Soviet era behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, he is a politician's politician. Yes. And so anyway, so he's talking to this guy and he's kind of relaying what that guy had said to Stephen Ray's character. And a lot of it's amazing and it's very flattering. He talks about like, the first lesson he teaches is always about you and blah, blah, blah. And it's really cool. But I think the best and sort of like, I don't know, most crushing part of it is he tells Stephen Ray's character that this man, quote, rotates his people off of murder cases every 18 months, whether they like it or not, to prevent the inevitable psychological strain that comes along with chasing somebody you'll never catch. And, or so, I can't remember.
This is near the end. This is almost a decade worth of work. Yeah.
And he also follows it up by saying, like, I pretended like I knew this, but secretly I did not, and I hope you take my sincerest apologies for not doing this, because Stephen Ray's character does have several like breakdowns, and like it put him under incredible psychological strain. So absolutely amazing quotes, amazing movie. How about ratings? What are we feeling?
I was gonna say also in that same scene, so like Sutherland says, like, he told me I wouldn't want a man like that after me.
Yes,
in regards to Ray's.
That was what the guy said. It's like he's in regard to Ray's character. He's the last person I would ever want chasing me.
Exactly, because he's so tenacious.
Yeah. So I guess as far as rating goes, I'm gonna throw 6.7 kitchen knives at this. It's way above the 50% mark for me. I don't have any interest necessarily in going back and rewatching it, but I am really thankful that I did have a chance to watch it. That 6.7 kitchen knives. What are you looking at, Tim?
Okay. Do like the performances. Do like the severe nature of this, but again, I can't recommend it to every audience, so I will just do a solid 6 posters of Lenin in Stalingrad to the audience out there. So 6 out of 10 Stalingrad posters of Lenin. I don't even know if it's in Stalingrad where they're taking place.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. I don't know where they're taking place.
So what are you looking at there, Colin?
As I've said, I love this movie, and it's one that I recommend as often as I can. I have to go big for this movie, and I'm going to give it an 8.5 Russian trench coat. There's a great scene involving the official Russian trench coat, so I'm going to go Russian trench coats on this one.
It's a good train station scene.
Yeah, excellent scene. 8.5 for me. So anything else before we wrap up this episode?
No, I feel like we've thoroughly sliced and diced it.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right, well,
and you know what? Dolores Umbridge is a loving wife, and I would take her for my bride anytime.
Honestly, she is great in this movie, and just a world away from her.
She's in a minimal amount of scenes too. Like, that's the thing, but she
hate her in
it.
this,
Yeah.
And I hated her in Harry Potter.
Oh yeah,
how do you hate her in Harry
she's
Potter?
a delight
She's
in this.
Great.
All right, well
children.
That's all for the Ultra Crepidarian review. Thank you for listening, friends. If you have any ideas for movie reviews, please email us at 3. That's the number 3. meninabasement@gmail.com. Until then, I'm Colin McLeod.
Mark Culp over there.
Tim Magic checking out.
All right, we'll see you in cyberspace.
Peace.